Thank you, Jose. Good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to be here back at the TIA Summit. I remember last year I was here speaking about the idea of open networks with backend protocol as a way to reimagine the digital economy to make it more inclusive, equitable, the same time, supercharge innovation, market-led innovation at population scale. Uh, and India's population scale is quite a scale, so we need several solutions that works for everybody, one and all in India. And I spoke about how that idea is leading to stories like the Open Network for Digital Commerce, a very big project happening in India right now. Namayatri, some of you might have or should, I would personally recommend to take the three-wheeler tuk-tuks, the auto rickshaws. That happens in a totally decentralized manner with no central platform, no intermediary in the center as a peer-to-peer network. So these are some of the things that I alluded to, and I think Jose also brought that up as part of my introduction. So I was wondering what should I be talking about this year, and as the larger agenda suggests, I thought it's important that I talk about something more important, something more urgent that is confronting all of us today in the times we are living in. And I thought a conversation on accelerating climate action. I was asking this question, is that conversation complete without having a conversation on interoperability? And I think that's something that I thought I'll spend the next 20 minutes talking about and see if that excites a few more questions in your mind, thoughts, and we continue these conversations and see how we can work on that, take that forward collectively to see what could be a different way, approach to sort of solve for some of the complex problems we are dealing with. Yeah, so it looks like my slides are up. Great, thank you, Kevin. So yesterday, Copernicus Climate Service in Europe reported that for the first time since the commencement of industrial age, our planet has crossed what is called the threshold of irreversibility when it hit the 2 degree temperature limit. So we are 2 degree hotter than where the Earth planet was before industrial age. Although we crossed it temporarily, it does indicate a sign of things to come. And as scientists claim, this 2 degrees is sort of the sign of an irreversible change the planet will go through. So I think it's important that we talk about this and see why we need to reimagine how we are looking at accelerating climate action. Yeah. On that note, clearly, and I'm not going to talk about what is climate change, what are the effects. I think many of us are aware, and I'll not spend time, but what's happening for sure is, yes, world is getting hotter. People are getting older. And as we can see, the relationships are getting colder. As individuals, as society, and as countries, we are going through some very tumultuous times right now. And it's therefore important to recognize what have we brought ourselves to and where are we going from here. I'm not going to talk about how the last 3-4 centuries of economic progress has led to this. Yeah, so we have been doing some great job building new technologies, new solutions, and we have been focusing on probably necessary at that time, in terms of having a human-centered development. But if human-centered development has brought us to this, then I think it's about time we start asking question that how do we make this shift from a human-centered development to more humanity-centered development, where we're not just putting ourselves and people at the center of agenda, but ourselves and the planet also at the center of the agenda. And that is a very difficult situation we deal with, and how do we find the solutions? What is the solution? Is there a solution that will solve? I think climate change, we all agree, is a very complex, convoluted problem. The problem itself is shape-shifting. It does not affect one region, one person, one city, one country. It's the entire planet, our entire civilization, the entire evolution of life on this little rock. It's affecting everyone, and it's multidimensional, multifaceted. So I think it's important, therefore, when we think about how do we solve for this, and when we are confronted with this question called what is the solution, I think it's about time we make that question irrelevant. Irrelevant, and think about a different way of approaching this very complex problem. While the problem is complex of a different kind, we have seen how we have solved some complex problems. India has been dealing with complex problems. I see India as a corridor of all the world's complex problems and opportunities. That comes with the size and diversity that we do. I mean, we are probably the world's third largest of economy, but our per capita income is that of sub-Sahara. So we do have extremes of both sides, and we've been dealing with these problems, and we think maybe digital is one way to reimagine the method of solving, not the solution itself. And India has been leapfrogging. We're calling it the India's last decade as the techade, because India brought everybody, for example, from just 18% banking penetration to 85% banking penetration in 7 years because of a way of thinking. Not because we did a very specific solution, but we changed the question. We made the question irrelevant and said, we need a different way of thinking. And that thinking is this. We didn't ask what's the solution. We said, what should be the way to build a multitude of solutions for complex, diverse problems? So we shifted our question from solution thinking to infrastructure thinking. What does the difference look like? For example, infrastructure, yes, we all probably love having a good Ferrari for ourselves, but what use of a Ferrari if you don't have roads? Roads are infrastructure. Ferrari is not going to offer you a designer road when you buy a Ferrari. But when we have roads, we have multitude of solutions. We can go from Ferrari to a tractor, to a bus, to a school bus. Infrastructure allows multitude of solutions to come about. It sort of shifts this thinking from solving alone to distributing that ability to solve. And while solving, how do we solve for scale? Because many solutions that we often come across work in certain pockets, work in certain contexts. When we start scaling those solutions to a much larger scale, like population scale, planetary scale, it doesn't fit into the context. A ride-hailing company in Palo Alto may not be the right solution in Bangalore because the contexts are different. So how do we think about, instead of scaling what works, to saying how do we think about what works at scale? And that's a way of thinking that India has been adopting for some of the problems that India is confronting. And I think it's probably an opportune time, given the sense of urgency, that does even sustainability and climate action need that model of thinking, and that allows for not finding the solution, but finding an ecosystem that allows for multitude of solutions that works for diverse context, for diverse requirements, because we are not dealing with one simple problem at hand. And probably you would have heard me speak about this. The two things that I'm very passionate about. One is the idea of internet, whether it's Web 1, 2, 2.5, 3, whatever integers and fractions that come after, the idea of internet, and what India has been trying to do with that idea, with the idea called digital public infrastructure. And internet is a great example of not being a solution itself, because internet by itself does nothing, but it offers the critical infrastructure at planetary scale to think of several solutions. Who would have thought that a network of 40 terminals across a few universities, as a response to a military problem during the Cold War, where said a command and control means it creates vulnerability at the command, how do we decentralize command and control? And that idea led to TCP/IP and HTTP, all the protocols that gave birth to internet, who would have thought that that particular thinking could unleash a whole new form of economy now we call the digital economy, that by itself, if it were a country, would probably be the world's largest economy by 2030. How did that happen? An idea that was supposed to connect a few terminals and exchange information today is the home for biggest taxi network, home network, learning. During COVID, pretty much our lives were on internet during the pandemic. How did that idea happen? That's inspiring. And therefore, it was very fascinating for somebody like Winsor, who is one of the founding fathers of internet, recently talk about at the 50th year of internet last year, speak about the possibilities that you're witnessing and the possibilities that are yet to be witnessed by us. Just 1%. We've only seen 1% of the potential with an idea like internet, with an infrastructure like internet. And that, I think, is an important way to sort of shift our way of thinking around how do we solve for exponential change problems when it comes to climate action. Now, why is internet so powerful? Because internet is not a platform, it's not one company's or one country's tech solution by itself. It's just a collection of open protocols, a bunch of standards which are fundamentally, by design, by purpose, interoperable. Just like our human language. I'm today speaking in English to all of you, and if I were to use my own dictionary of English and change the language, my English would be different from yours, and English itself is not interoperable. If languages were not interoperable, probably there's no point having this kind of a congregation in the first place. Like language, internet is interoperable. It allowed any solution, any platform to talk to any platform with open standards. As much as the internet is open, we build platforms to create the digital economy on top of internet, which perhaps abdicated interoperability. The internet is open, but somehow the economy on the internet over the last 2.5, 3 decades did not remain open. We left go of interoperability. But interoperability with internet, we saw, created this whole massive diverse solutions like an Amazon, Uber, Netflix, and what have you. It offers diversity. It can scale. Today, I think the number of devices connected to internet are more than 25 billion. We do 200 billion email exchanges per day, all because of interoperability. It gives diversity, scale, and more importantly, it brings all of us together. It got the whole world connected, solutions connected. Netflix is not a solution that works only in America. Whole world can access Netflix, or just internet. Our early internet systems, like internet itself, GPS, our mobile phone technology, I could be using Airtel calls. You don't have to be on Airtel to calls. You don't have to be on Airtel to receive my calls. We are all interoperable. So all the core systems were interoperable. And that, for me, is something that I want all of you to leave as an important idea, thought with, that how interoperability is critical to bring all of us together to address some of the critical problems. Can we do this, therefore, take this idea of internet, from internet, telecom, email, and think about how we solve for some of the problems of the digital economy and some of the problems of sustainability. And that's where I thought this conversation would become important. And these are all because of protocols. Backend protocol is augmenting to the protocol stack that internet has and saying where internet stopped with interoperability of information, we are saying backend protocol as an open source idea will bring interoperability of economic transactions here on top of internet to make the internet economy a bit more inclusive. Now, so therefore, can we now think about, instead of asking what is the solution, to saying how do we build a digital infrastructure with protocols to accelerate climate action? And that's a topic that I thought is very necessary and urgent for our times. And that's where I thought I'll talk about a few examples that I could think about, we could think about in a community around backend protocol, which is open source. We have the community from across 4 continents now, part of this, and it's growing, who are asking this question: can we use the protocol thinking to solve for some of the biggest climate action? And that's where I thought I'll spend my time. For those who are probably not aware of the idea of backend protocol, what it does is to reimagine this model that we see with an Uber, Amazon, Airbnb, or any platform-based economy where you have the consumer and provider on the same platform, to make them work in a system where it works like emails, where I could be on, say, Hotmail, you could be on Gmail, not on the same platform, but as a sender and receiver, we can still exchange messages. If that can happen with people being on two different platforms, why can't commerce? Why can't economic transactions between consumer and provider? So we are shifting the whole way of thinking from platforms to protocol-led open networks, where you have different platforms with different solutions, but they can multiply their power by harnessing each other. And those little lines that connect each other was the missing piece in the fabric of internet, and that's where open standards of backend protocol for transactions between a consumer provider in two different platforms, two different digital infrastructure systems can talk to each other and thus create an open network like the network you're seeing on the right hand side, perhaps a very busy slide. Yeah. And this is not just an idea. In the last 2 years, India has been adopting this across several sectors of the economy. So ONDC is one of the largest projects going from mobility, grocery, food, logistics to now what we are seeing, it's increasingly adoption in some of the sustainability space when it comes to how do we think about energy transition? How do we accelerate adoption of EV? One of the biggest anxiety with adoption of EV is access to EV charging infrastructure, and every charging infrastructure is building it as a siloed platform like an independent Uber or an independent Amazon. But what if it's available ubiquitously, seamlessly for anybody as a network, decentralized EV charging? So those are some of the projects we spoke about. And we're not just talking about this, having this conversation in India, we're having diverse conversations across Europe, Africa, South America, and some early conversations in America as well. Because I think everybody realizes that this is a need of the hour. This is a way to reimagine how we create this building block to foster more innovation and have a more thriving economy, and also have a chance at accelerating the climate action. Now, as I was talking about, what we created with Beacon as a protocol for reimagining energy distribution. So today we have applications going from decentralized EV charging to virtual energy warehousing, where there's a startup is using Beacon to harness idle batteries from the ecosystem without owning a single battery, to offer energy storage systems so that the energy we are harnessing from solar or wind or anything doesn't just go away into the earth, but you're actually storing that renewable energy for reuse and repurpose and make it accessible at much lesser cost. We're also talking about how do we create a second life for an EV battery and make it available for creating microgrids, where consumer of electricity is now a prosumer, and you can create microgrids and do not have dependency on a grid which is still not high on the renewability mix. So these are some of the conversations we're talking about. How do we think about sustainable climate action with open networks? Similarly, circular economy. We're having a conversation with a sugar producer, one of the world's largest sugar producer, thinking about regenerative agriculture, where we're talking about the waste that comes after the harvest can be brought back to the farmer through a transformation process where there's a circular logistic network for the waste to be collected by a pyrolysis plant, generate biochar, and make it go back to the farmer. And biochar as a carbon is the best form of carbon that increases moisture of soil, and we're taking away carbon from the atmosphere. So circular economy, accelerating climate change. And what is interesting is, this sugar producer does not have to find all these solutions by itself, like itself being trying to be the Amazon of everything. It's just trying to say, if I open this network, private startups, tech companies, all can be nodes on this network. I can harness all of them to actually derive value that is sustainable and make the 50,000 farmers in its network actually benefit. And on top of the circular economy, we are doing network for financial services, again with backend protocol, network for learning and education on new farm practices, for regenerative agriculture, sustainable practices, all happening without having one person left with the burden of solving for everything by itself. As a network, diverse set of solution providers come together, each good in one particular piece of the puzzle, coming together and creating a network. And imagine a network of network, internet. We have, as I said, we have financial services, supply chain optimization through open networks, a whole lot of things coming and working, and maybe even a carbon offset network. All of them coming together to accelerate climate action. It could be in a small region, in a country, it could be at the country level, it could be at the continent level, it could be worldwide. So this way of bringing diverse solution with the infrastructure thinking and then allowing multitude of solutions to work together, collectively achieve scale, like the way the pattern that internet showed us, is one of those things I thought I can speak about and see why the conversation on interoperability is so important as part of climate action. Yeah, and drive combinational innovation, exponential change. When you're seeing some of these projects already taking shape in Africa and US, including climate response. So yeah, so the question here is this necessary? Is this important? How do we start tipping the domino effect of exponential change to deal with an exponential crisis that we're all confronted with? Those were my 20 minutes. Thank you so much.